Hey guys, it's Casey and welcome back to my channel. Today, to absolutely nobody's surprise, I want to discuss work. I want to discuss my job because, well, that's what I discuss 95% of the time here on my channel because my job is crazy. My job is insane. You know how a lot of people say that their job is the most boring job in the world and that their biggest complaint in day-to-day life is that a Karen has set up base camp next to the copy machine, or that Bob from accounting is microwaving fish pie for lunch again in the break room. Yeah, my job is nothing like that. My job is the place where reality likes to go on a poorly timed smoke break, and you have no choice but to just deal with whatever rolls through your doors in its absence. A case in point would be the first time that a government agency decided to visit my workplace in the flesh. Now, this was not the friendly type of we're here to help a government agency. This was a we show up unannounced, wearing black suits, and armed to the absolute teeth with enough cryptic energy to rival a conspiracy theorist's fever dream type of government agency. Now, I have known the entire time that I've worked here that we are under surveillance at all times. It's not something that's hidden, it's blatantly out in the open. It's the reason why I get flown out to Melbourne once every 3 months to talk to some people. And then there was that time that Dress Levesque broke into the owner's office and we found I'd never been in his office before. Like, it was always locked. He's very rarely here, the owner of the clinic, but he broke into the owner's office and we found that the entire back wall of his office was covered in monitors showing security footage from pretty much every inch of the clinic and its perimeter. And I'm talking, these were CCTV cameras that I had no idea even existed. They were covering areas that really shouldn't have been covered. But I then had to take a few days off work because Dress had broken my arm and that needed attention. But then when I returned to work, I found out that while I was gone, the owner had come and he had removed every single camera on the premises. Because I guess there's nothing quite like finding a room full of hidden security cameras to really bring the question of personal privacy into the public domain. But if you ask me, and I hold this opinion to this day, I feel like removing every security camera on the premises was a bit of an overcorrection of the issue. Anyway, we're going off topic because this story is, for once, not about Dress Levesque. It is about the first time that agents came to visit me at my place of employment. So this specific day was a very particular kind of day and a very predictable kind of day that we have here at the clinic, and that is, it was the first warm day after winter. And the first warm day after winter is one of the worst days of the entire year because we are so busy, and we're not busy with like normal things, we're busy with increasingly stupid patients with increasingly stupid injuries. And so by the end of this day, I was exhausted and our pharmacy had been completely picked through to the point that in our pharmacy, I keep a box of lawn gnomes with a little sign, and it's a joke saying that they're firewood, they're for sale as firewood. And on this specific day, we had actually managed to sell a couple of these lawn gnomes as firewood. That's the level of stupidity that I'm talking about here. So at this point, it's about 1 a.m. in the morning and the ER is finally empty and I have my first moment of peace for the entire day. So I am reveling in it and I'm sitting behind the reception desk and reading my book when all of a sudden these two men in black suits appear out of seemingly nowhere. I had not heard the bell that we keep above the door ring. I had not noticed them approach. I had not seen them come towards the desk. They were just there. And one of them, he knocked on the desk and he was like, we need to talk. And I'm like, okay, well, the clinic cafe is in that direction. Knock yourself out. It's self-serve after 10 p.m. And I promise I won't listen to anything either one of you have to say. I'm reading my book. And he's like, no, we need to talk to you. The men introduced themselves to me as agents of DARPA and they flashed me their badges, which might have been legitimate, but honestly, they moved so quickly that I didn't get a good look at them. Then they announced that they are here to handle a problem related to my social media usage. Then one of the men, he proceeds to introduce himself to me, and he introduced himself to me as Special Agent Richard Briscoe. Then the other man introduced himself to me. The other man, also Special Agent Richard Briscoe. They weren't joking, and they're not twins. They just claimed that it was a very common name where they were from, because apparently when you become a special agent, you go to the special agent equivalent of Barbie Land, where everyone is Richard Briscoe. This was several years ago, and it still perplexes me every time I think about it. And I have met them on several additional occasions since this first initial meeting, and it throws me every time one of them says their names, which I guess is probably the whole point of it in the first place, but whatever. Anyway, they weren't there for snacks or stitches, they were there for me. More specifically, they came for my phone. They had a warrant and everything, but they didn't actually need it because I was more than happy to hand it over without any resistance, which they seemed surprisingly disappointed about. Turns out that they were trying to clean up a mess that I'd accidentally made a few days earlier when I'd done a TikTok live stream, which, in all honesty, is no different to this video that I'm filming right this second. I told a few of my stories, I told a few jokes, we'd had some ha-has, I'd gotten a few roses, it was all great. Except for the fact that I had, apparently, according to them, described in a bit too much detail a ritual that I'd observed when I was a teenager, and they did not appreciate that at all. Now, I know that I need to take some form of personal responsibility with how things turned out. Actually, in hindsight, I probably need to take all the personal responsibility because apparently I put too much trust in strangers on the internet to make good decisions with their lives. But when I come to my videos and I record these videos, for me personally, knowing what I know and living the life that I've lived, they are a form of therapy. But I would expect you, as the viewer coming to them as a 2024 person with a 2024 knowledge base, that when you listen to them, they're just a little bit of fun. You listen to these silly, goofy, and fictional stories, and you get some enjoyment out of them, and then you forget about them, and you go about your life, and you never think of them again. How the hell was I supposed to know that there are idiots out there who would listen to my stories, come to my videos, watch them, with a 2024 knowledge base, and still somehow, with what they know and what they don't know, take them as literal gospel? According to the agents, at least 4 people watched my live stream that night, listened to what I had to say, and all the consequences that came about as a ritual, and still decided that they wanted to try to replicate it as idiots. Oh my god, idiots. And apparently the results had been catastrophic. They didn't go into much detail, but apparently a lot of really horrible things happened, unspeakable things involving butts. So once they had finished explaining all that to me, one of the agents, Richard Briscoe, he took my phone and he plugged it into a laptop and started deleting files. And while he is doing this, the only other agent, Richard Briscoe, he started unpacking everything for me so I had a better understanding of what they were doing and trying to achieve. So the way that he explained it to me is that my live stream that night was like patient 0 of a mind infection that had spread wide and far. And he worded it as that stories are kind of like viruses, and once they're released into the digital ether, they kind of spread and evolve to the point that they are no longer under the control of the original creator. So the agents Briscoe, they were not content to simply erase all knowledge of my live stream from existence. No, they were determined, absolutely determined, to ensure that no one would ever take anything I ever said seriously ever again. And the way that they went about driving this point home is that one of them performed a stunt so bizarre and so grotesque that all these years later, I am still struggling to process exactly what happened. I'm not going to get too much into exactly what he did, but let me just say that it involved a spoon and his own eyeballs and a commitment to a bit that leaves you questioning reality itself. Their logic was very, very simple, to the point that it was actually borderline genius. If I ever tried to recount this encounter to anybody, they wouldn't believe me, because honestly, who in their right mind is going to buy the story of 2 dark agents, or 2 very sexy dark agents, was their own personal choice of wording for the story, visiting a shitty little town in the literal middle of nowhere destination, the Australian outback, about a viral TikTok live stream before performing an impromptu self-enucleation? It was all very, very genius. And to the point that when they were explaining to me why they had done this and that no one would ever believe me, I was like, well, what happens if I just choose to leave the whole eyeball thing out of my explanation of the story? And they became very offended at that, and they were like, you wouldn't dare do that. This is the most interesting part of this whole entire interaction. And they're absolutely right. Like, it was very, very impressive. I was very impressed. And I was actually borderline honored that they did this in my honor. So I'm not going to leave this out of the story ever. So if there's one thing that I've learned from this whole encounter, it's that the internet is a wild, unpredictable beast, and you might be sitting here thinking that you're just telling an innocent story that no one in their right mind would ever believe as true or try to replicate in any way, but before you know it, it's fallen into the right hands, or really, more accurately, in this case, the wrong hands, and it's spiraled completely out of your control, and there's nothing you can do about it. And I guess if there's a second thing that I've learned, it's that I should probably start Googling myself more, because who the hell knows what the internet has decided to do with my life? Like I said, it's an unpredictable beast, so I should be aware. be a bit more aware than I am at the moment. So I guess this is Casey signing off. Stay weird out there, stay safe, and maybe try not to recreate every random thing that you see or hear on the internet. Or do. It's really none of my business, it's your life. Have a good night.